Picture this: you're walking through what looks like an empty field or a stretch of weathered stone, surrounded by little more than silence and dust. You might think you're standing on nothing special, just another patch of earth. But what if I told you that right beneath your feet, hidden from view, lies an entire world? A labyrinth of tunnels, sealed chambers, lost artifacts, and stories waiting for a voice. These are the abandoned capitals of history, places like Carthage, Babylon, Teotihuacan, that once pulsed with life, power, and grandeur, now silent on the surface, but whispering beneath. There's something deeply human about what's buried. We've always built not just upward toward the sky, but downward into the earth for protection, for ceremony, for survival. These underground spaces hold more than just bones and stones. They cradle the dreams, fears, and ingenuity of people who walked this planet centuries or even millennia before us. And today, with advances in technology and archaeology, we're beginning to peel back those layers, revealing truths that rewrite textbooks and reshape our understanding of civilization itself. So join me on a journey, a deep dive into the mysteries lying under abandoned historical capitals. We'll explore sacred caves that served as portals to the spirit world, escape tunnels engineered for kings, entire cities hidden from invaders, and libraries preserved against time itself. This isn't just a tour of ruins, it's an excavation of human resilience, a testament to how much remains undiscovered, and an invitation to see history not as something distant and static, but as a living, breathing narrative still being uncovered. What we find down there might just change how you see everything up here. There's a certain magic to these forgotten centers of power, places where history doesn't just sleep, it hides. Think about Carthage, a city so powerful that Rome allegedly salted its earth to ensure nothing would grow again. Yet beneath that symbolic layer of salt, the Carthaginians built a network of subterranean cisterns and tunnels so advanced they could sustain a besieged population for months. Or consider Babylon, with its legendary hanging gardens, one of the ancient world's wonders. While scholars debate their exact location, many theories suggest they might have been an elaborate multi-level structure, partly built into or beneath the earth, using advanced irrigation technology that was centuries ahead of its time. Then there's Ankara, the sprawling Khmer capital swallowed by the jungle. Its surface temples astonish visitors, but beneath the complex lay an ingenious water management system of canals and reservoirs that supported 1 million people, a system whose failure might have contributed to the city's eventual abandonment. What draws us to these places isn't merely their fall from grace, it's the palpable sense of a story interrupted. We walk among their ruins and feel the ghost of their grandeur. We see a broken column in Carthage and wonder about the merchant who leaned against it, watching ships from across the Mediterranean dock in the harbor. We stand in the dust of Babylon and try to hear the echoes of the bustling processional way. We gaze at the stone faces of Angkor Thom and imagine the ceremonies that once animated these spaces. This connection to the human experience across millennia is profoundly moving. It reminds us that empires, no matter how mighty, are built by people with hopes, fears, and ambitions not so different from our own. Their abandonment itself is a lesson in the complex forces that shape civilizations. War, of course, is a common culprit, the sacking of a city, the conquest by a rival empire. But often, the reasons are more subtle and far more instructive. A shift in trade routes can starve a capital of its economic lifeblood, as happened with many Silk Road cities. A prolonged drought or a natural disaster, like an earthquake or volcanic eruption, can cripple the infrastructure that supports a dense population. Sometimes it's a slow decay from within, political corruption, social unrest, or an overexploitation of natural resources that turns a fertile region into a desert. By studying why these capitals were left behind, we're not just learning about the past, we're holding up a mirror to our own societies, asking ourselves about resilience, sustainability, and what truly makes a civilization last. And this is where the real mystery begins, because the most revealing answers are rarely found on the surface. The grand palaces and temples were the public face of these capitals, the projection of their power and ideology. But it's beneath our feet, in the cellars, the sewers, the secret passages, and the hidden crypts, where the intimate, unvarnished truth of daily life resides. These underground spaces were the practical engine of the city above, storing grain, channeling water, housing the dead, protecting the living during attack, and sheltering clandestine rituals. An unmarked subterranean chamber might hold the key to understanding a city's spiritual beliefs. A forgotten tunnel could reveal the paranoid security measures of a ruling elite. A clogged drainpipe might contain seeds and pollen that tell us what people ate and how their climate changed. This is the ultimate allure, the promise that by digging deeper, both literally and figuratively, we can recover not just the bones of these cities, but their beating hearts. But to truly grasp the scale of Roman ambition, we have to venture below the bustling streets and into the shadows. While visitors today crane their necks to admire the arches of the Forum or the grandeur of the imperial palaces on Palatine Hill, an entire second city exists beneath their feet, a labyrinth known collectively as the Hypogium. This isn't a single tunnel, but a vast, multi-layered underworld of chambers, passageways, and conduits that served as the literal foundation of Roman power. It was the city's hidden circulatory system, carrying everything from fresh water and sewage to soldiers and secrets. Far from being a dark and forgotten place, it was a vital, active component of daily life, engineered with the same precision and foresight that defined Rome's surface achievements. Consider the sheer practicality of these spaces. Beneath the grand public venues like the Colosseum, a complex network of elevators, pulleys, and holding pens operated entirely underground. This is where gladiators prepared for combat and where exotic animals were kept before being dramatically hoisted into the arena sands above, creating the spectacular special effects that thrilled Roman crowds. Meanwhile, extensive subterranean aqueducts like the Cloaca Maxima, one of the world's earliest sewage systems, channeled water and waste with remarkable efficiency, ensuring public health and enabling the city's massive population to thrive. But the Hypogeum's function extended far beyond logistics and spectacle. It was also a realm of intrigue. Secret passageways, like the famous Cryptoporticus tunnel, allowed emperors and elites to move between palaces and temples unseen, safe from public scrutiny or potential assassins, weaving a hidden web of power beneath the marble and monuments. This subterranean world also became a sanctuary for those operating outside the official state religion. The early Christian catacombs, while located outside the city walls, are the most famous example of this, but within the city itself, hidden chambers and meeting places provided spaces for clandestine worship and community, building away from the eyes of the authorities. The discovery of these spaces, often marked by simple, secret symbols, has dramatically reshaped our understanding of religious life in ancient Rome, revealing a persistent underground struggle for faith and identity. Modern archaeology is now pulling back the curtain on this hidden dimension with non-invasive technologies like ground-penetrating radar, which allows researchers to map these fragile structures without disturbing them. These digital surveys have revealed previously unknown chambers, suggesting that our understanding of this underground network is still evolving. with each new scan potentially holding clues to a lost chapter of Roman history. What the Hypogium ultimately demonstrates is the beautiful, complex duality of ancient capitals. The glorious surface of Rome, with its forums, temples, and statues, was a deliberate projection of imperial power and civic order, a stage set designed to inspire awe and loyalty. But the true engine of that empire, the messy, practical, and often secretive machinery that made it all work, was humming along just beneath the surface. It's a powerful reminder that to understand any great civilization, we cannot just look at what it built towards the heavens. We must also listen to the whispers from the earth below. This intricate relationship between the practical and the profound takes on an even deeper meaning when we travel across the world to a place where the underground was not merely functional, but was considered a sacred portal to the cosmos itself. While the Romans built their underworld for practical power and clandestine movement, the ancient people of Teotihuacan carved into the earth for a far more profound reason: to touch the divine. This city, whose name means the place where the gods were created, presents a landscape where every mountain, temple, and street is meticulously aligned with celestial events. But to truly grasp its spiritual heart, you must look not up at the towering pyramids, but down into the dark, sacred earth beneath them. The most staggering example lies directly under the massive Pyramid of the Sun. Archaeologists discovered that this colossal structure, one of the largest of its kind in the world, was intentionally built over a natural cave system that was then dramatically enlarged by human hands. This was no coincidence. For the Teotihuacanos, and later for the Aztecs who revered the site long after it was abandoned, caves were not just holes in the ground. They were seen as wombs, sacred portals to the underworld, and direct channels to the primordial forces of creation and destiny. Building their most important monument atop this powerful natural feature was a way to physically and symbolically anchor their entire civilization to the very source of life and the cosmos. The discoveries within these subterranean spaces have fundamentally rewritten our understanding of Teotihuacan's purpose. Excavations have uncovered elaborate offerings left deep inside these caves: precious greenstone masks, obsidian blades, intricately carved figurines, and the remains of animals like pumas and wolves, all carefully arranged as if in dialogue with the gods. Most telling, however, are the human remains found in some chambers, suggesting rituals that may have involved sacrifice, a practice believed to be essential for maintaining the cosmic order and ensuring the sun would continue its journey across the sky. The walls themselves tell stories, adorned with faded but discernible murals depicting deities, mythological scenes, and abstract patterns that scholars are still working to decipher. This wasn't a hidden or secret practice. It was the central engine of their society. The entire city's layout, with its vast avenue of the dead and precisely oriented temples, seems to be a giant mirror of the cosmos above, with these underground portals serving as the crucial connection point between the heavens, the earth, and the world below. This deep spiritual reliance on the underground may also hold clues to one of history's greatest puzzles. Why was this magnificent city, at its peak one of the largest in the world, suddenly abandoned around the year 550 CE? For a long time, the prevailing theory pointed to a violent external invasion. However, the evidence from these sacred caves and other sites within the city tells a more complex story. There are signs of deliberate, systematic burning of temples and elite residences, not from a haphazard attack, but from a carefully targeted uprising from within. The very murals that celebrated rulers and priests were defaced. This suggests that a massive internal revolt, perhaps driven by social inequality, environmental stress, or a loss of faith in the ruling class's ability to commune with the gods, may have been the true cause. A prolonged drought, evidenced by geological data, could have crippled their agriculture, leading the people to believe their leaders had lost favor with the deities who controlled the rain and sun. When the rituals in those sacred caves failed to bring relief, the entire spiritual and political contract that held the city together may have shattered. The legacy of Teotihuacan's underground is a powerful reminder that for many ancient cultures, the world beneath our feet was not separate from the divine. It was an integral part of a living, breathing cosmos. It was a place to petition the gods to ensure survival and to understand humanity's place in the universe. This profound spiritual relationship with the subterranean stands in stark contrast to our next destination, where going underground was not about reaching the gods, but about outsmarting mortal enemies. From the sacred caves of Mesoamerica, we now journey to the heart of a mighty empire where the depths were engineered for a far more earthly purpose: survival against the most powerful armies of the ancient world. If the sacred caves of Teotihuacan were a spiritual gateway to the gods, then the tunnels beneath Persepolis were something entirely more pragmatic, a masterpiece of engineering designed for the ultimate earthly challenge: survival. While the city's magnificent surface, with its soaring columns and grand staircases adorned with reliefs of subject nations, was built to project an image of invincible power, its architects knew that true strength required a hidden dimension. Deep beneath the stone platforms of the royal terrace, they carved an elaborate, secret world of tunnels and water channels, a subterranean insurance policy against the very real threats of siege, betrayal, and invasion. This was the genius of the Achaemenid Empire, a breathtaking public display of confidence backed by a private, deeply practical plan for resilience. The scale of this underground work is staggering. These weren't simple holes in the ground. They were meticulously engineered passages, wide enough for a quick escape and integrated with the palace's very foundations. The most famous of these is likely the sophisticated water management system. In an arid region, controlling water was synonymous with controlling life itself. A network of subterranean channels known as qanats brought fresh water from miles away, feeding into hidden cisterns that could sustain the royal court and its guards during a prolonged lockdown. But perhaps even more impressive were the escape tunnels. Carved directly into the bedrock, these clandestine routes would have allowed the great king and his inner circle to vanish from the heart of the palace and emerge at a safe distance from the city, should the unthinkable happen and the gates be breached. Imagine the scene: in the midst of chaos and fire above, a calm, deliberate procession moving through the cool, dark rock, following a path known only to the most trusted few. This wasn't a sign of weakness, it was the ultimate symbol of strategic foresight. For a long time, much of this was theoretical, based on scattered historical accounts and visible openings. But recent archaeological work has begun to illuminate this hidden world, and the findings are rewriting chapters of Persian history. Using ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation, researchers have mapped more of these tunnels than ever before. Within them, they haven't just found empty passageways, they've uncovered forgotten storerooms, artifacts dropped in haste, and perhaps most fascinatingly, administrative tablets and inscriptions. These clay records, preserved in the dry, dark environment, detail the immense logistical operation required to run the empire: the payment of workers, the inventory of supplies, the movement of troops. They reveal that the underground was not just for emergencies, it was also a secure administrative hub, a place where the mundane paperwork that held a vast empire together was safeguarded. This offers a poignant clue to the city's final days. When Alexander the Great's army arrived, they didn't just encounter a ceremonial capital, they faced a fortress with a deep, secret plan for continuity. The burning of Persepolis was so thorough, so complete, that many historians believe Alexander was making a definitive statement. He wasn't just defeating an army, he was systematically destroying the very infrastructure, both above and below ground, that could allow the empire to rise again. The tunnels of Persepolis, therefore, stand as a powerful lesson in layered defense. They represent a civilization that understood power is not just about visible grandeur, but also about invisible preparation. It was an empire that planned for triumph but also for contingency, that built for the ages but also engineered for its own preservation. This profound understanding, that resilience often lies in the depth of one's preparations, not just the height of one's monuments, is a timeless strategic truth. And it perfectly sets the stage for our next exploration, where this concept of underground resilience was taken to its most extreme and breathtaking conclusion. We now travel to a region where people didn't just build tunnels for escape, they built entire cities beneath the surface, transforming the very earth into a permanent refuge. The strategic genius of Persia's subterranean escape routes reveals a profound truth about ancient power. True resilience often lies hidden in the depths. But what if that need for refuge wasn't just for a royal court, but for an entire civilization? This brings us to one of the most astonishing feats of underground engineering in human history, found not beneath a grand capital, but in the heart of a unique landscape, the otherworldly region of Cappadocia in modern-day Turkey. Here, the very rock itself was hollowed out into not just tunnels, but vast, multi-level subterranean cities, the most famous being Derinkuyu. These are not mere shelters, they are entire inverted metropolises, capable of sustaining thousands of people for months on end, representing the absolute pinnacle of building for survival. The scale of these complexes is almost incomprehensible. Derinkuyu, for instance, plunges 18 levels deep into the earth, a dizzying depth that could house an estimated 20,000 people along with their livestock and supplies. This wasn't a single cavernous hole. It was a meticulously planned vertical city with a clear urban layout. There were distinct residential quarters, families living in small, carved-out rooms connected by narrow passageways. There were communal spaces like churches, with vaulted ceilings and altars painstakingly chiseled from the living rock, ensuring spiritual solace during times of dire threat. Massive chambers served as wine and oil presses, and sprawling storerooms were stocked with giant clay pots of grain, dried meat, and other provisions. Stables for animals were strategically placed on upper levels, and there were even dedicated areas for the dead. Every conceivable function of a surface town was replicated in this sunless world, a testament to a community that planned for the absolute worst-case scenario. This incredible feat of habitation was only possible because of breathtakingly sophisticated engineering that solved two fundamental problems: how to breathe and how to seal themselves in. The architects of Derinkuyu engineered over 50 ventilation shafts, some stretching over 100 meters to the surface. These narrow wells provided a constant supply of fresh air to even the deepest levels, completely eliminating the threat of suffocation. Even more iconic are the massive circular stone doors. These are not ordinary gates, they are immense millstones weighing up to half a ton each. They were designed to roll into place from the inside, perfectly slotting into grooves in the doorway, effectively creating an impenetrable, seamless barrier against any intruder. These doors could only be operated from within, and they were deployed at key choke points throughout the city, allowing sections to be sealed off independently if a breach occurred. It's a defensive system of incredible cleverness and strength. While the exact origins are debated, the most extensive use and expansion of these cities is widely attributed to early Christian communities around the 7th century and onward, seeking refuge from relentless Arab raids. For them, these underground labyrinths were a sanctuary where they could preserve their faith, culture, and very lives against overwhelming odds, but it's a mistake to think they were built from scratch in a single era. The soft, volcanic tuff rock of Cappadocia was incredibly easy to carve, and evidence suggests the Hittites may have started the first tunnels over 3,000 years ago. Later, every civilization that passed through Persians, Byzantines, Ottomans added their own layers, expanding and modifying the complexes. Derinkuyu is not a single-era monument but a palimpsest of human fear and ingenuity, written and rewritten underground over millennia. The existence of these sprawling subsurface cities forces a thrilling and unsettling question upon us. If such vast, sophisticated complexes could be constructed and then forgotten for centuries in a rural region like Cappadocia, what might lie concealed beneath the known capitals of the ancient world? Could there be entire districts, administrative centers, or refugee networks still waiting to be discovered under the familiar ruins of great empires? The sheer organizational effort required to build and maintain a place like Derinkuyu suggests a level of social cooperation and technical skill that makes anything seem possible. It expands our imagination of what ancient peoples were capable of and challenges archaeologists to look deeper, literally, at every major site. This incredible testament to communal defense stands in stark contrast to our next destination, where the underground was used not for hiding from the world, but for celebrating it in stunning, permanent artistry. From the communal fortresses of Cappadocia, we now turn to a place where the underground was transformed from a place of refuge into a breathtaking gallery of art and engineering. Welcome to Petra, the legendary rose-red city carved directly into the sandstone cliffs of southern Jordan. While its most famous facade, the Treasury, is an iconic image known across the world, that astonishing structure is merely the surface-level introduction to a much deeper story. The true genius of the Nabateans isn't just in what they built against the cliffs, but what they carved into the earth beneath them, a sprawling underworld of tombs, temples, and hydrological wonders that reveals a civilization uniquely blending the practical with the profoundly spiritual. The most immediate and awe-inspiring underground features are, without a doubt, the monumental tombs. The so-called royal tombs that line the valley are not simple holes in the rock. They are elaborate multi-chambered complexes designed as eternal homes for the elite. To step inside the urn tomb or the palace tomb is to leave the harsh desert sun behind and enter a cool, shadowy realm of exquisite craftsmanship. The walls and ceilings are often adorned with intricate stucco work and faded remnants of paint, suggesting they were once vibrant with color. These were not just places to inter the dead, they were settings for ongoing funerary rituals and feasts, where the living would gather to honor their ancestors, believing that the sacred, sheltered space of the tomb served as a bridge between this world and the next. This practice shows a society that saw the subterranean not as a place of darkness and endings, but as a protected, holy space for eternal rest and remembrance. Yet, to focus solely on the tombs is to miss half of Petra's subterranean miracle. The Nabateans were, first and foremost, masters of water in a brutally arid landscape, and their true masterpiece lies in the complex hydraulic systems they built beneath the city. While other civilizations built aqueducts above ground, the Nabateans often carved theirs directly into the bedrock, creating a hidden network of channels, cisterns, and dams that were invisible to the eye. This underground web collected precious winter rainwater from a vast catchment area, channeling it through a gradient of tunnels to massive, carved storage tanks. This engineering marvel did more than just prevent evaporation. It was a strategic asset. It allowed Petra to thrive as a wealthy trading hub, providing fresh water for its people, their gardens, and the countless camels and merchants traveling the incense routes, making the city an indispensable oasis in the desert. Their control of this most vital resource was the true source of their power and wealth. For centuries, we believed we had a good grasp on Petra's scale, but modern technology is proving just how much we have yet to learn. The ongoing application of LiDAR light detection and ranging technology is revolutionizing our understanding of the city. By scanning the terrain from above, archaeologists can create a detailed digital map of the surface, effectively seeing through the sparse vegetation to reveal subtle depressions and structures invisible to the naked eye. These scans have already identified numerous previously unknown rock-cut platforms, structures, and, most excitingly, hints of more chambers and tunnels that have been buried by centuries of silt and landslides. Each new discovery suggests that the Petra we see today is only a fraction of the original city, and that its deepest secrets and most beautiful art may still be waiting patiently beneath the sand for their story to be told. Petra's legacy is this powerful duality, a society that could create breathtaking beauty to honor death, while simultaneously employing brilliant, practical engineering to sustain life. They used the subterranean world for both ceremony and survival, seeing the earth not as an obstacle but as a partner, a canvas for their art and a vessel for their most precious resource. This seamless fusion of the spiritual and the practical presents a captivating model of an ancient capital in tune with its environment. But not all underground spaces were designed for reverence or resource management. Our next journey takes us to a site where the depths were engineered for something far more calculated and clandestine: the consolidation of political power and the protection of a royal lineage from its enemies. High atop the mist-shrouded Andes, Machu Picchu stands as a testament to Inca brilliance, a royal retreat seemingly suspended between the heavens and the earth. But to truly understand this architectural marvel, we must look beyond its iconic terraces and stonework, descending into the hidden world that made its existence possible. While it wasn't an administrative capital like Cusco, it functioned as a sacred imperial estate, a private sanctuary for the emperor and his court, and its most ingenious secrets are woven into the very rock beneath it. This was a landscape engineered in 3 dimensions, where the underground wasn't an afterthought. It was the foundation of both spiritual power and practical survival. The most immediately striking underground features are the ritual caves and meticulously constructed tunnels that perforate the site. The Temple of the Moon, for instance, is not a traditional above-ground structure, but a complex of exquisite ceremonial chambers carved into a cavern beneath the peak of Huayna Picchu. This was clearly a sacred space of immense importance, used for rituals that connected the Inca elite with the Earth Mother deity, Pachamama, and the subterranean world of the ancestors. But the practicality of Inca spirituality is what truly astonishes. These sacred caves aren't randomly placed. Their entrances and internal chambers are often precisely aligned with celestial events, such as the solstice sun or the movements of specific stars. This creates a profound cosmological map where the heavens above could be observed and celebrated from the depths below, physically linking the Inca understanding of the universe into a single, continuous realm. This seamless blend of the spiritual and the strategic is further evident in the network of hidden pathways that crisscross the mountainside. While the main trails are visible, archaeologists have identified a web of narrower, concealed passages that connect key structures. These weren't just simple footpaths. They were designed for discrete movement, allowing the emperor and priests to move between ceremonial spaces unseen by the general population, maintaining an aura of mystery and divinity. More importantly, in the event of a threat, these same pathways offered rapid and secret escape routes down the incredibly steep slopes, a crucial defensive feature for a secluded royal compound. This dual purpose, facilitating both sacred ritual and strategic security, shows a sophisticated mindset that viewed landscape engineering as a holistic practice. Perhaps the most revolutionary insight, however, comes from understanding how the Incas manipulated the underground to master their environment. The breathtaking agricultural terraces we see are only half the story. Beneath them lies a complex infrastructure of drainage channels and aqueducts that weave through the bedrock. This system did more than just prevent landslides, it actively regulated microclimates. By controlling water flow and air circulation through these subterranean channels, the Incas could create distinct temperature zones. Certain terraces were kept warmer, acting as experimental gardens to grow crops from different ecological tiers, while underground storage chambers, known as kolkas, were designed to be cool and dry, preserving food like maize and potatoes for years to sustain the population through lean times. This wasn't just farming, it was a form of climate control biotechnology, achieved centuries before the modern era. The discoveries within these spaces have profoundly deepened our understanding of Inca beliefs. The mummies found in secluded caves and tombs weren't merely buried. They were carefully arranged in fetal positions, wrapped in fine textiles, and surrounded by precious offerings, shells, pottery, figurines. This indicates a belief in a continued existence within the earth, a return to the womb of Pachamama. The artifacts tell a story of a people who saw no stark division between the living world and the spiritual one, between the landscape and their gods. They managed their environment with a reverence that acknowledged it as a living, sacred entity. Machu Picchu, therefore, forces a complete re-evaluation of how we perceive ancient urban planning. It demonstrates that a city's relationship with its landscape wasn't one of domination, but of intricate, symbiotic negotiation. The Incas didn't simply build on the land, they listened to it, learned from it, and enhanced its natural properties to create a self-sustaining system of breathtaking elegance and intelligence. This holistic view of the world, where every tunnel, cave, and channel served multiple interconnected purposes, challenges us to look at other ancient sites with new eyes, to wonder what hidden synergies between the built and the natural environment we might have missed. This harmonious integration stands in stark contrast to the underground world we turn to next, which was born not from reverence for the earth, but from a very different kind of reverence, one for the dead, and the macabre lessons they held for the living. While the Incas of Machu Picchu built their underground world in harmony with nature, viewing it as a sacred extension of their cosmology, the relationship with the subterranean took a far darker and more pragmatic turn in the heart of one of Europe's most celebrated capitals. Paris, the city of light, famous for its art, culture, and romance, rests upon a foundation that tells a profoundly different story. A silent, shadowy city of the dead known as the Catacombs. This vast network of tunnels and chambers, stretching for hundreds of miles, is not a natural cave system but the abandoned quarries that provided the stone to build the city above. And in the late 18th century, they were called upon to solve a crisis festering in the sunlit world, a problem so overwhelming it threatened the very health of the living. The issue was one of pure, gruesome logistics. For centuries, Parisians had buried their dead in parish cemeteries, the most famous being the Cemetery of the Innocents in the city's center. These grounds became horrifically overcrowded, with mass graves so packed that decomposing bodies often seeped into the basements of surrounding homes and contaminated the water supply, spreading disease. The situation reached a breaking point in 1780, when a particularly wet spring caused a wall bordering a property to collapse, unleashing a wave of putrefaction into a neighboring cellar. This macabre event was the final straw. The city authorities made a radical decision. They would evacuate the cemeteries, but where do you put the bones of millions of people? The answer lay in the forgotten, crumbling labyrinth beneath their feet. Thus began a decades-long, nocturnal operation of breathtaking scale and morbidity. Every night, black-draped wagons would process through the streets, carrying countless bones from the desanctified cemeteries. Waiting for them below were workers who undertook the immense, surreal task of organizing this anonymous humanity. They didn't just dump the skeletons, they carefully arranged them, stacking skulls and femurs into macabre patterns, creating walls of bones interspersed with rows of skulls that form arches and even decorative hearts. This was more than mere storage. It was an attempt to impose a sense of order and even melancholy beauty upon the ultimate chaos of death. Inscriptions carved into the stone pillars speak to visitors, "Halt. This is the empire of death," a sobering memento mori for anyone who walks these silent avenues. This transformation from a practical public works project into a cultural symbol is where the story deepens. Over the centuries, the catacombs have become a powerful symbol of rebellion and a canvas for the clandestine. So-called cataphiles, urban explorers who illegally map and inhabit the forbidden sections, have created their own secret world down there, complete with fully stocked bars, movie theaters carved into the rock, and intricate murals. This underground rebellion mirrors the revolutionary spirit that has often defined Parisian history, a place where the rules of the surface world simply do not apply. It represents a fascination with the macabre, a dance on the edge of mortality that forces us to confront our own inevitable end in a way that a neatly manicured cemetery never could. For historians, the catacombs are a unique archive. They offer a stark record of 18th century urban planning and the very real public health crises that rapidly growing cities faced. They tell a story of how Enlightenment thinking applied rational, if drastic, solutions to problems that were once considered acts of God. But more than that, they stand as a permanent, unsettling reminder of the duality of great cities. Even the most vibrant, thriving metropolis on Earth is built upon layers of history, memory, and the remains of those who came before. Paris's elegant boulevards and bustling cafes exist in direct parallel to this silent, crowded necropolis, a hidden dimension that gives the city of light a profound and necessary shadow. From the silent, bone-lined passages beneath Paris, we now journey to a capital that vanished not into the earth, but beneath the sea, a story not of deliberate construction, but of catastrophic preservation. Imagine a bustling port, the air thick with the scent of salt, incense, and exotic spices. Ships from across the Mediterranean dock along grand quays, their hulls filled with Athenian silver, Egyptian grain, and Nubian gold. This was Thonis Heraclean, the legendary gateway to Egypt, a city so vital that it was considered a myth for centuries, until one day in the late 1990s, when a French underwater archaeologist named Frank Gaudiot, working from ancient texts and geological surveys, finally found it. Not on land, but under 10 meters of water in a Baukia Bay. The city hadn't been destroyed. It had been swallowed whole by the Mediterranean, its glorious collapse frozen in time beneath a protective blanket of sediment and sea. The scale of the discovery is still coming into focus, piece by magnificent piece. The seafloor is littered with the breathtaking debris of a city interrupted. Colossal statues of pharaohs and queens, some standing over 5 meters tall, lie toppled on their sides, their serene stone faces gazing up through the murky water toward a sun they haven't seen in over a millennium. Nearby, the ruins of a massive temple dedicated to the god Amun-Jereb, the supreme deity of the city, are scattered with smaller devotional statues, gold coins, and delicate jewelry. Perhaps most astonishing are the 75 ancient shipwrecks found buried in the harbor clay, the largest collection of ancient vessels ever discovered in one place. These aren't just artifacts, they are a moment captured. The ships, still laden with their cargo, tell a vivid story of a city that was the mandatory customs and trading hub for all sea traffic between Greece and the Nile Delta. Every merchant, every diplomat, every traveler entering Egypt by sea had to pass through Thonis Heracleion, making it a vibrant, cosmopolitan melting pot and a colossal source of tax revenue for the pharaohs. This underwater world acts as a perfect, if accidental, time capsule. The same layer of fine clay and sand that buried the city also protected it. Organic materials that would have rotted away on land, wooden hulls of ships, delicate papyrus documents, woven baskets, even food remains have been preserved in remarkable detail. This allows archaeologists to reconstruct daily life with an intimacy that is usually impossible. They have recovered steel or inscribed stone slabs that clearly establish the city's dual identity. Thonis was its Egyptian name, Heracleion its Greek one, and that outline the taxes levied on goods. They've found evidence of the religious syncretism that flourished here, where Greek deities like Hercules were worshipped alongside Egyptian gods, and where rituals blended traditions from both cultures. The city wasn't just a trade nexus, it was a crucible where two of the ancient world's greatest civilizations met, mingled, and influenced one another profoundly. The cause of its sinking adds a dramatic, geological layer to the mystery. The city was built on the unstable sediment of the Nile Delta, most likely a perfect storm of factors, a rising sea level, a gradual liquefaction of the clay soil under the weight of its own grand structures, and finally a trigger event like a major earthquake or a tsunami caused the entire landmass to simply give way. The ground beneath the city's foundations literally turned to liquid, and in a relatively short period, the entire metropolis sank into the sea, where it was slowly forgotten, its existence fading into legend. This method of preservation is unique. While other sites are picked over by looters or eroded by wind and rain, Thonis Heracleion's secrets have been held in the ocean's cold, dark embrace, waiting patiently for the technology and the will to find them. The ongoing recovery of these treasures forces us to completely re-evaluate our understanding of ancient maritime trade and cultural exchange. It proves that some of history's most pivotal connections happened not just in famous inland capitals, but in these dynamic, vulnerable port cities. Each artifact pulled from the bay is a puzzle piece in a larger story about how ideas, goods, and people moved across the ancient world. Furthermore, the discovery of Thonis Heracleion makes the tantalizing prospect of other sunken capitals seem not just possible, but probable. If a city of this size and significance could be completely lost to the sea for over 1,000 years, what other legendary gateways, trading posts, or even entire capitals might lie hidden beneath the waves, their stories waiting to reshape history? This sunken metropolis shows us that sometimes the past isn't buried, it's submerged, offering a different kind of refuge for the echoes of a lost world. This concept of refuge takes on a new and brilliant meaning as we travel from the sunken ruins of Egypt to the sands of Mali, where the underground was used not to escape water, but to safeguard something even more precious, the irreplaceable light of knowledge itself. While the Mediterranean waters claimed Thonis Heracleion, preserving its physical treasures in a watery grave, an entirely different kind of preservation was taking place over 1,000 miles to the south, in the heart of the Sahara Desert. Here in the fabled city of Timbuktu, the greatest treasure wasn't gold or statues, but something far more enduring and revolutionary: knowledge. As the Songhai Empire flourished, making Timbuktu a dazzling crossroads of trade and scholarship, its citizens amassed an astonishing collection of manuscripts. But this intellectual golden age was constantly under threat, from the harsh, arid climate that could brittle and destroy delicate paper, and even more from the waves of invasion and conflict that swept across the region. The solution was as ingenious as it was simple. Families, scholars, and merchants began to build private libraries not in grand buildings above ground, but in hidden, sealed vaults carved deep beneath the earth or concealed within the thick walls of their homes. These weren't mere hiding places, they were sophisticated time capsules designed for the long-term survival of ideas. The underground environment provided a natural defense. The stable, cool, and dark conditions of the desert subsoil were ironically perfect for preservation, protecting the fragile inks and papers from the scorching sun and dry, damaging winds. But the primary defense was against human destruction. During periods of invasion, whether from Moroccan armies or internal conflicts, these precious texts would be carefully catalogued, wrapped in protective cloth or leather, and secreted away in these subterranean chambers. The very existence of these libraries was often a closely guarded family secret, passed down through generations. For centuries, they remained hidden, their contents known only through rumor and legend, a whispered testament to a scholarly tradition that the outside world had largely forgotten. What has been recovered from these vaults is nothing short of a historical revolution. We're not talking about a few scattered scrolls. Over the past few decades, efforts led by local families and supported by international researchers have brought to light over 400,000 manuscripts, and experts believe hundreds of thousands more may still be undiscovered. The scope of their subject shatters every outdated stereotype about pre-colonial Africa. There are meticulously observed astronomical charts used to navigate the desert and mark religious holidays, with precise calculations that rival those of their European contemporaries. There are complex legal texts debating intricate points of Islamic and customary law, revealing a sophisticated judicial system. Medical treatises detail surgical procedures and list herbal remedies for diseases, while philosophical works grapple with ethics, governance, and logic. There are vibrant poetic anthologies, detailed historical chronicles, and intricate mathematical texts. This collection proves unequivocally that Timbuktu was not some remote outpost. It was a vibrant, humming intellectual capital, a university town that attracted the finest minds from across Africa and the Middle East. The modern effort to save this knowledge is a dramatic story in itself. In 2012, when extremist groups occupied northern Mali and began a campaign of destroying cultural artifacts they deemed un-Islamic, a daring rescue operation was launched. Librarians and ordinary citizens risked their lives to smuggle these manuscripts out of Timbuktu, often in the dead of night. They packed them into metal chests and rice sacks, transporting them by donkey cart, boat, and car to the safety of the capital, Bamako, in an effort that saved over 90% of the known collections from certain destruction. Now the focus has shifted to preservation and digitization. Teams of conservators, many of them local experts trained in the craft, carefully clean, repair, and digitize each page, making this incredible repository of knowledge accessible to the world online for the first time. The underground libraries of Timbuktu represent a profound and moving idea that the most valuable thing a civilization can possess is not its wealth or its weapons, but its intellect. The act of burying knowledge wasn't an act of surrender. It was the ultimate act of faith, a belief that the values of scholarship, reason, and beauty were worth preserving through any darkness, with the hope that one day they would be brought back into the light to inspire future generations. It's a powerful testament to the resilience of the human spirit in the face of ignorance and destruction. This deliberate, thoughtful protection of a culture's core identity through concealment stands in stark contrast to our next destination, where the underground was engineered not to hide fragile pages, but to project immense, unconquerable power. We now journey to a city that used the depths not for preservation, but for impenetrable defense, the legendary capital of the Byzantine Empire, Constantinople. If the libraries of Timbuktu show us the power of hiding knowledge, then the tunnels beneath Constantinople demonstrate the raw power of securing survival itself. In a city famously besieged countless times, the key to its legendary impregnability wasn't just its massive triple walls above ground, but the breathtakingly sophisticated world it built beneath them. While the soaring domes of Hagia Sophia proclaimed its spiritual grandeur, the true engineering marvel that sustained the Byzantine capital for a millennium lay hidden in the dark, an extensive, strategic network of subterranean cisterns, aqueducts, and fortified passages. This wasn't merely infrastructure, it was a deep, calculated insurance policy against annihilation, designed to make the city a self-sustaining fortress capable of outlasting any army that camped at its gates. The most famous of these structures is the magnificent Basilica Cistern, a vast cathedral-like underground reservoir just a short walk from Hagia Sophia. But to call it a simple water tank is a profound understatement. Supported by a forest of 336 recycled marble columns, some salvaged from even older Roman temples, this subterranean palace could hold an astounding 80,000 cubic meters of fresh water. It was fed by the Valens aqueduct, which stretched over 250 kilometers, channeling water from forested hills far outside the city. This system was the lifeblood of Constantinople. During a siege, when an enemy could simply cut off or poison local water sources, this guaranteed reserve meant the city's population could drink, cook, and maintain hygiene for months, if not years. The psychological advantage was immense. While besieging forces grew thirsty and desperate under the sun, the defenders above had a veritable sea of fresh water calmly waiting beneath their feet. The cistern's sheer scale, with its beautifully symmetrical arches reflected in the still, dark water, is a haunting monument to Byzantine foresight, turning the simple act of storing water into an act of supreme strategic genius. Yet the water system was only one part of a much larger and more secretive subterranean strategy. Historians and urban explorers have long whispered about the existence of far more clandestine tunnels, known as the Hypogeum or the Myriandrian. These were not for water, but for the movement of people, information, and treasure. It is believed that a network of these fortified passages connected key imperial palaces, major churches like Hagia Sophia, and the formidable land walls. Their purpose was multifaceted and brilliant. They allowed the emperor and his guards to move between strongholds unseen and safe from assassination plots or mobs. They enabled messengers to carry intelligence across the city without using the streets, which might be swarming with enemy spies or in chaos during an attack. Most crucially, they provided a means for sudden, surprising counterattacks. Small, elite units could theoretically slip out from a hidden sally port, strike a vulnerable point in the enemy's siege lines, and vanish back underground before a proper response could be organized. This turned the city's defense from a static wall into a dynamic, three-dimensional battlefield. The true extent of this clandestine network remains one of Istanbul's greatest mysteries. Every so often, construction work or a deliberate archaeological survey reveals a new section, a bricked-up archway, a staircase descending into darkness, a chamber filled with artifacts. Some of these discovered spaces show evidence of having been used as emergency shelters for the elite during the most brutal sieges, stocked with supplies. Others, more tantalizingly, are believed to have served as the empire's ultimate treasury vaults. Imagine a hidden chamber deep beneath the imperial palace, where the vast wealth of the Byzantine state, gold solidi coins, jeweled regalia, and sacred religious relics could be secured against both external conquest and internal theft. The mere existence of such a possibility speaks to a level of strategic paranoia and meticulous planning that is almost unimaginable. It was this depth of planning, both literally and figuratively, that allowed the Eastern Roman Empire to endure for so long against overwhelming odds. The endurance of Constantinople's underground systems ultimately determined the fate of empires. The city's legendary defenses, a combination of the visible walls and the invisible subterranean web, repelled invaders for century after century. It finally fell not because its walls were breached in a conventional sense, but because a single, small gate was left unlocked, or so the story goes. Yet even in its fall, the underground played a role. There are persistent legends that in the final, chaotic hours of the city's capture by the Ottomans in 1453, Byzantine officials used these very tunnels to hide priceless artifacts and perhaps even members of the royal family, smuggling them away to safety. The fortified tunnels of Constantinople stand as the ultimate expression of a civilization that understood power in its most complete form. It was a power that needed not just towering churches and strong armies, but also secret passages, endless freshwater, and hidden vaults. It was a power that planned for every contingency, proving that sometimes the deepest foundations are the ones that truly hold up an empire. This profound understanding of the underground as a tool for enduring power stands in stark contrast to our next destination, where humanity dug deep not for defense in this life, but for a glorious and permanent preparation for the next. From the fortified tunnels of Constantinople, where the depths were engineered for the raw power and survival of an empire, we now travel millennia back in time to a place where the underground was designed for an even more permanent kind of power, the eternal reign of kings and queens in the afterlife. In the sun-baked soil of southern Mesopotamia, the ancient Sumerian capital of Ur held secrets that would stun the world when they were unearthed in the 1920s. Here, British archaeologist Leonard Woolley made a discovery so lavish and so chilling that it fundamentally reshaped our understanding of early civilization. The royal tombs, a series of elaborate subterranean burial complexes that were not just graves, but stunning declarations of divine power, wealth, and a profound belief in what lay beyond death. The sheer opulence found within these chambers is almost beyond comprehension. The most famous tomb, that of a woman named Puabi, contained a treasure that would rival any modern crown jewel collection. Her body was adorned with a magnificent headdress of delicate gold leaves, lapis lazuli, and carnelian beads, its craftsmanship so fine it seems to shimmer with life even after 4,500 years. She wore heavy golden earrings and a cape of meticulously strung beads, and she was surrounded by vessels of silver and gold, a beautifully decorated lyre with a golden bull's head, and a stunning board game, likely meant for her entertainment in the next world. But it wasn't just the objects, it was the staggering evidence of their beliefs. Puabi was not buried alone. In a practice that seems jarringly brutal to the modern mind, she was accompanied into the afterlife by a retinue of human attendants. Archaeologists uncovered the carefully arranged remains of soldiers, handmaidens, charioteers with their oxen, and even court musicians, each holding their instrument, all who had apparently willingly taken poison to serve their queen forever. This was not an act of mere slaughter. It was a deeply ritualized ceremony, suggesting a powerful cultural belief that the social hierarchy of the palace continued unchanged into the next life, and that service to the divine ruler was eternal. The architectural genius of these tombs further reveals the sophistication of the Sumerians. To create these large, stable chambers deep underground, they employed a technique known as the corbelled arch, stacking bricks in successively inward-sloping layers to form a rudimentary but effective vaulted ceiling. This was a monumental innovation, a precursor to the architectural principles that would later define grand structures across the ancient world. Furthermore, they understood the threat of the elements even in death. The tombs show evidence of sophisticated waterproofing and drainage systems, designed to protect their sacred contents from the occasional floods that swept across the Mesopotamian plain. They built these burial chambers not as temporary pits, but as eternal, fortified houses for the dead, constructed with the same care and engineering prowess as the palaces above ground. This demonstrates a society that viewed the subterranean not as a place of decay, but as a permanent, functional extension of their royal world. What the royal tombs of ultimately provide is a breathtakingly clear window into the birth of social complexity. The immense labor required to build these complexes, the staggering concentration of wealth in one individual, and the absolute power over life and death they represent, all point to a society that had moved far beyond simple village life. Here was a rigidly stratified hierarchy, with a ruler considered so divine that their passage into the next world required an entire court to follow. The artifacts themselves, made from materials like lapis lazuli from Afghanistan and carnelian from India, speak of vast, established trade networks that connected early cities across continents. Each item, from a gold cup to a soldier's skeleton, tells a chapter in the story of how humanity first organized itself into powerful, centralized states, with all the grandeur and grim consequences that came with it. The discovery forces a profound and unsettling question about the universal human condition. Why, across so many cultures, from the pharaohs of Egypt to the emperors of China, did we feel the need to bury our most powerful and most precious things deep within the earth? The royal tombs of suggest an answer. The earth was seen as a protective womb, a sacred threshold between the world of the living and the realm of the gods and ancestors. To place a king and his treasures there was to ensure their safety, their purity, and their continued influence, sealing their legacy for eternity. It was the ultimate act of commemoration, a physical manifestation of the hope that some part of us and the power we wield can endure forever. This spiritual drive to use the underground for eternal preservation stands in stark contrast to our next journey, which takes us to a place where the motivation for going beneath the surface was not about eternity, but about the utterly practical and immediate challenges of daily survival in one of the most extreme environments on Earth. From the eternal tombs of built to honor the divine dead, we now travel to a place where the motivation for going underground is refreshingly, starkly practical, a matter of daily survival against an unrelenting sun. Welcome to Coober Pedy, a remote town in the vast, arid outback of South Australia that stands as a stunning, modern-day testament to human adaptation. This is not a historical capital, but a living, breathing community where the majority of life happens not in buildings on the land, but within the land itself. The entire town is a network of hand-carved caves, or dugouts, where residents live, worship, socialize, and even swim, all to escape the brutal desert heat that routinely soars above 115 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a powerful, real-world example of how the subterranean world isn't just a relic of the past. It's a viable, innovative solution for the present and future. The origin of this extraordinary town is as unexpected as its appearance. Coober Pedy is the world's opal capital, a place where fortune seekers have been digging for the precious gemstone since its discovery in 1915. The name itself comes from the Aboriginal words kupa piti, often translated as white man's hole in the ground. The first miners, toiling in the scorching sun, quickly realized the ground they were digging into offered a perfect refuge. The sandstone bedrock was soft enough to be excavated with basic tools, yet structurally sound enough to create stable, permanent rooms. They began simply by expanding their mine shafts into their living quarters, discovering that the earth provided natural insulation, maintaining a constant, comfortable temperature around 77 degrees Fahrenheit year-round, regardless of the inferno raging outside. What began as a miner's makeshift camp evolved into a full-blown town with a unique architectural identity, all born from sheer necessity and ingenuity. Today, the town is a fascinating subterranean ecosystem. You can stay in an underground hotel, waking up in a cool, silent room carved from solid rock. You can pray in a stunning underground church, like the famous Serbian Orthodox Church, whose beautifully arched ceilings and ornate icons are all meticulously carved into the sandstone, creating a serene and reverent atmosphere that feels both ancient and immediate. There's an underground bookstore, art galleries, and even a bar where you can have a cool drink surrounded by the walls of a former opal mine. For a truly surreal experience, you can visit the local swimming pool, a vital community hub, which is also built underground to keep the water cool and protect swimmers from the sun. This isn't a novelty. It's a fully functional model of subterranean urban planning that challenges every conventional notion we have about how and where we should live. The benefits of this lifestyle extend far beyond simple comfort. The energy efficiency is staggering. Homes require virtually no heating or air conditioning, drastically reducing their carbon footprint and utility costs. The thermal mass of the Earth naturally regulates the climate inside, making these dwellings incredibly sustainable. Furthermore, they offer unparalleled protection from the harsh outback environment, not just from the heat, but also from the frequent dust storms that sweep across the landscape. The silence underground is profound, a welcome respite from the howling desert winds. This practical, low-tech approach to sustainable living offers powerful lessons for architects and urban planners worldwide, especially as we grapple with climate change and the increasing energy demands of traditional construction. Kuba Pedi is a living laboratory, demonstrating that the most effective solutions for resilience can sometimes be found by looking not to new technologies, but to the wisdom of adapting to our environment in the most direct way possible. The existence of this thriving subterranean community forces a thrilling and provocative question for historians and archaeologists. If a modern town can so effectively and comfortably transition life underground for purely practical reasons, how many of our ancient ancestors might have done the very same thing? We often interpret underground structures found in ancient capitals primarily through a ritual or defensive lens, as tombs, temples, or escape tunnels. But Kuba Pedi suggests we should also seriously consider the mundane, domestic angle. Could some of the chambers and tunnels found beneath places like Cappadocia or Petra have served a dual purpose, providing cool, comfortable living and working spaces during the heat of the day? The comfortable, stable environment of a dugout is a universal benefit, not a modern invention. This modern example gives us a new framework for imagination, encouraging us to picture the daily lives of people in ancient desert capitals utilizing their underground spaces not just for ceremony or crisis, but for the simple, peaceful comfort of a cool room on a hot afternoon. It expands our understanding of the past by showing us a living parallel in the present. This concept of practical adaptation makes the sudden and complete disappearance of an entire capital all the more mysterious, pulling us toward our next destination, where the underground isn't about comfortable living, but about preserving the chilling evidence of a catastrophic end. The legend is one of the most enduring in all of mythology, a terrifying half-man, half-bull monster lurking at the heart of an impenetrable labyrinth, a maze so complex that none who entered could ever find their way out. For centuries, the story of the Minotaur was considered just that, a thrilling myth from the island of Crete, a cautionary tale about the dangers of arrogance and the wrath of the gods. But what if the myth was rooted in a geological and archaeological reality? The magnificent palace complex of Knossos, the vibrant capital of Europe's first advanced civilization, the Minoans, is rumored to sit above a lost world of tunnels and chambers. While we may never find the literal bull-headed beast, the truth emerging from the soil beneath Knossos is, in its own way, even more compelling. A story of ingenious engineering, sacred rituals, and a civilization brought to its knees by one of the most violent natural disasters in human history. Stepping into the reconstructed ruins of Knossos today, with its vivid red columns and graceful frescoes of leaping dolphins and elegant court ladies, you get a sense of a society that was sophisticated, artistic, and surprisingly peaceful. Their palaces lacked the towering defensive walls common in contemporary Mesopotamia and Egypt. Instead, their genius flowed downward. The real labyrinth of Knossos wasn't a single maze designed to hide a monster. It was the sprawling, multi-level basement of the palace itself, a complex, interconnected web of corridors, magazines, and chambers that served as the functional engine of the entire state. Here, in the cool, dark spaces below the sunlit courtyards, the Minoans stored the immense wealth that fueled their economy. Giant, elegant clay jars called pithoi, each one capable of holding hundreds of gallons of olive oil, wine, and grain. The scale is staggering. Row upon row of these storage magazines line the underground corridors, a testament to a complex system of agricultural surplus and redistributive economics that was the hallmark of their advanced administration. But these subterranean spaces were far more than just a giant pantry. Archaeologists have also uncovered what appear to be ritual areas deep within the palace's lower levels, small, dark chambers, sunken basins known as lustral basins, and altars that suggest these spaces were used for ceremonies that connected the living with chthonic or underworld deities. The very act of descending into the earth may have been a central part of their religious practice, a symbolic journey into a realm of powerful forces. It's not difficult to see how these experiences of moving through the dim, confusing basement corridors lined with giant, shadowy storage jars could have inspired the later Greek invaders to spin tales of a monstrous creature in a maze. The myth of the Minotaur, then, might be a distorted memory, a folk-tale explanation from newcomers who encountered the vast, bewildering, and perhaps spiritually charged underground complex of a civilization they could not fully comprehend. The true mystery of the Minoan decline, however, is where the underground story takes its most dramatic turn. Around the year 1600 BC, the volcanic island of Thera, about 70 miles north of Crete, exploded with a force that makes the eruption of Mount Vesuvius look like a minor event. This was a cataclysm of almost unimaginable scale, one of the largest volcanic eruptions in the last 10,000 years. Thera didn't just erupt, it literally blew itself apart, leaving behind the dramatic caldera we see today. The immediate effects on Crete would have been apocalyptic. First, a suffocating blanket of volcanic ash would have smothered the island's fertile fields, crippling agriculture for years. Then, colossal tsunamis, waves estimated to be over 100 feet high, would have slammed into the northern coast of Crete, devastating the Minoan navy, the source of their trading wealth, and obliterating every coastal town and palace in their path. And this is where the underground spaces of Knossos become a unique, accidental time capsule. While the waves scoured the surface, the lower levels and cellars of the palace were protected. Within these buried rooms, archaeologists have found a layer of evidence that tells a silent, horrifying story. In some areas, there are chaotic piles of fallen masonry and pottery, hurled about by the force of earthquakes that preceded the final eruption. In others, a distinct layer of ash and pumice from Thera has been preserved, a direct physical timestamp of the disaster. There is no layer of widespread fire or violent weaponry to suggest a massive invasion immediately followed. The damage is overwhelmingly environmental. The underground, which had so long supported Minoan life, now faithfully preserved the forensic evidence of the catastrophe that ultimately ended it. The civilization was likely weakened beyond recovery, its economy and population shattered, leaving it vulnerable to gradual takeover by the more warlike Mycenaeans from the Greek mainland. The story of Knossos, therefore, is a powerful and sobering lesson in the fragility of even the most brilliant human achievements in the face of nature's raw power. The Minoans, for all their artistry and sophistication, were no match for the geologic forces beneath their feet. Their vanished tunnels and chambers hold the key to understanding both their vibrant life and their sudden, dramatic decline. They remind us that history is not always shaped by kings and armies. Sometimes it is irrevocably altered by the fire and fury of the planet itself. This dramatic intersection of human innovation and natural catastrophe makes the steady, deliberate engineering achievements of our next civilization all the more impressive. A people who didn't just survive in a harsh environment, but mastered it through sheer intellectual brilliance, carving a network of life-giving water channels deep beneath the earth of a mighty maritime empire. While the Minoans of Knossos were ultimately overwhelmed by the cataclysmic forces of nature, another great maritime power took a far more deliberate and controlled approach to mastering their environment, turning a strategic weakness into their greatest defensive strength. On the coast of North Africa, the Phoenician capital of Carthage faced a constant, silent enemy, not rival empires or monsters from myth, but a simple, relentless lack of fresh water. In a region of arid conditions and unpredictable rainfall, supporting a massive population and a bustling naval empire was an existential challenge. The Carthaginian solution was one of breathtaking ingenuity. They didn't just find water, they built a hidden, liquid fortress beneath their feet, creating a subterranean web of aqueducts, cisterns, and tunnels that became the true, unsung source of their legendary resilience. The scale of this hydraulic network is almost impossible to overstate. While the famous Roman aqueducts were elevated marvels designed to showcase imperial power, the Carthaginian system was one of brilliant concealment and efficiency. A series of carefully graded underground channels, often carved directly into the bedrock, would capture every precious drop of seasonal rainwater from a vast catchment area in the surrounding hills. This water was then channeled for miles into the heart of the city, not to fountains for display, but into massive, hidden reservoirs. The most stunning of these were the immense covered cisterns of La Malga, a complex that could hold millions of gallons of water. Picture a seemingly endless underground landscape of vaulted, interconnected chambers, each one lined with a special waterproof plaster that prevented leakage. This wasn't just a storage system, it was a strategic water bank, ensuring that the city could endure years of drought or withstand a prolonged siege without ever thirsting. This engineering genius translated directly into military invincibility. The most famous test of this system came during the Third Punic War, when the Roman general Scipio Aemilianus laid siege to Carthage. For 3 long years, the Romans encircled the city, confident they could starve its people into submission, but the Carthaginians, drawing from their hidden aquatic wealth, held out. While the Roman soldiers baked in the North African sun, the defenders had enough water not only to drink but to maintain their sanitation, cultivate gardens within the walls, and even continue their daily industries. The tunnels themselves may have served a dual purpose beyond transport. Some historians speculate that certain clandestine passages could have been used for surprise sorties, allowing Carthaginian forces to appear suddenly behind Roman lines from an unseen exit, or to provide covert escape routes for messengers and spies. The very earth beneath the city became an active participant in its defense, a labyrinth of life-sustaining secrets that frustrated the world's most powerful army for years. The tragic irony is that this incredible system of survival ultimately could not save Carthage from the sheer, vengeful determination of Rome. When the city finally fell in 146 BCE, the destruction was so total and so methodical that it has become a byword for annihilation. The Romans, perhaps in grudging acknowledgement of the hydrological marvel that had prolonged the siege, did not merely destroy the cisterns. They systematically dismantled and buried them, attempting to erase not just the city, but the very knowledge of its ingenuity from history. For centuries, this buried technology was forgotten, its existence fading into rumor. It is only through modern archaeological excavations that we have begun to rediscover the true extent of this network. Using ground-penetrating radar and careful excavation, researchers have mapped the precise gradients of the channels and the staggering capacity of the cisterns, each discovery adding another layer of respect for the Carthaginian engineers whose work was so advanced it rivaled, and in some ways surpassed, that of their Roman conquerors. The legacy of Carthage's underground waterworld is a powerful lesson in the often overlooked foundations of power. We remember the city for its Admiral Hannibal and his elephants crossing the Alps, a dramatic tale of military audacity. But the true story of its endurance was written in the quiet, dark flow of water through rock and the patient accumulation of reserves in hidden chambers. It highlights a universal truth of urban survival. The most crucial resource is not soldiers or weapons, but a secure and sustainable supply of fresh water. The Carthaginians understood that controlling this resource meant controlling their destiny. Their brilliant, hidden infrastructure allowed them to thrive in a hostile environment and defy a superpower for years, proving that sometimes the greatest strength is not what you display to your enemies, but what you conceal deep within the earth. This mastery of essential resources for survival creates a fascinating parallel to our next destination, where a civilization used the underground not to preserve water, but to safeguard something even more precious and fragile: the entire written record of their culture and intellect. High atop a flattened mountain ridge in the heart of Oaxaca, the Zapotec capital of Monte Albon commanded a breathtaking view of the surrounding valleys, a strategic powerhouse that dominated the region for over 1,000 years. While its grand plazas, imposing ball courts, and pyramidal platforms were designed to project authority and celestial connection to everyone below, the city's true intellectual heart may have beat in a much quieter, more protected space, deep within the earth itself. Here, hidden beneath the stone-paved floors of temples and palaces, lay a network of elaborate tombs and chambers that served a purpose far beyond the burial of elites. Recent archaeological evidence suggests these cool, dark spaces functioned as secure scriptoriums, where scribes meticulously preserved the sacred and administrative knowledge of their civilization on deerskin codices, protecting the very soul of Zapotec culture from the unpredictable turmoil of the world above. The visual language within these tombs is a stunning window into a sophisticated worldview. The walls are not bare stone. They are adorned with intricate murals and hieroglyphic inscriptions that depict a complex pantheon of gods, detailed genealogies of rulers, and records of major military victories and diplomatic alliances. One of the most famous examples is Tomb 104, where the walls are covered with a beautiful procession of figures known as the danzantes, though they more likely represent captured and slain enemies of noble status. In other chambers, vivid paintings show the rain god Kasijo releasing streams of water, or ancestors participating in rituals, creating a direct visual link between the ruling class, the divine, and the natural world. For the Zapotec, these underground spaces were not voids of nothingness. They were actively charged places where the boundary between the living and the dead was thin, and where the acts of recording history and performing ceremony ensured the continued order of the universe. This practice of interring knowledge alongside the dead was perhaps the most brilliant preservation strategy imaginable. The dry, stable, and dark environment of a sealed tomb is ironically one of the best possible places to protect organic materials like animal skin codices from decay. But the motivation was far more profound than simple environmental control. By placing their most important records in these sacred, ancestor-guarded spaces, the Zapotec were making a powerful statement that history, governance, and spirituality were inseparable. The knowledge that guided the state was not considered mundane paperwork. It was a sacred trust, a divine inheritance that needed to be sheltered alongside the revered individuals who once wielded it. This fusion of the administrative and the spiritual created an incredibly resilient system for safeguarding cultural memory. The tragic counterpoint to this story, of course, is the devastating loss that occurred centuries later. When Spanish conquistadors and friars arrived in the 16th century, they systematically sought out and destroyed these codices, viewing them as pagan works of the devil. The vast libraries of Mesoamerica, containing thousands of years of accumulated knowledge on astronomy, history, medicine, and theology, were almost entirely consigned to the flame. This act of cultural erasure was so effective that it left a gaping void in our understanding of Zapotec civilization. The few codices that survived did so because they were hidden even more deeply, or were smuggled out to become curiosities in European collections. This immense loss makes the recent archaeological work at Monte Alban all the more critical and poignant. Modern technology is now allowing us to read these underground archives in new ways. While the codices themselves are largely gone, archaeologists are using high-resolution spectral imaging and 3D laser scanning to detect faint traces of pigment and inscriptions on tomb walls that are invisible to the naked eye. They are analyzing the residues in ink pots found in these chambers and studying the tools, styluses, pigments, grinding stones that were buried with scribes, the esteemed guardians of knowledge. These findings are leading to a revolutionary reassessment that certain tombs, particularly those with benches, special niches, and exceptional ventilation, were not merely sealed after a single burial. They may have been regularly accessed by a privileged class of priest scribes who used the serene, protected environment to consult the ancestral records, update the histories, and create new texts, effectively making the underground a living, active archive and administrative center. The hidden scriptoriums of Monte Alban ultimately reveal a civilization of profound depth and foresight. They understood that the endurance of a culture depends not just on its military might or architectural grandeur, but on the preservation of its stories, its laws, and its beliefs. By weaving the act of record-keeping into the sacred fabric of the underworld, they sought to build a legacy that would withstand the ravages of time and conflict. It is a heartbreaking irony that the very Spanish zealots who destroyed the above-ground manifestations of their culture may have never discovered these deeper, hidden libraries, leaving their sealed doors to be unlocked by archaeologists centuries later. Each faint glyph deciphered and each mural restored is a fragment of a stolen history being patiently returned, a voice from the underground slowly reclaiming its place in the human story. This deliberate, sacred protection of identity through concealed knowledge finds a powerful echo in our next destination, where an entire city sought refuge not just for its people, but for its faith, carving a sanctuary of breathtaking beauty into the very rock of a contested land. Perched on a remote plateau in eastern Turkey near the modern border with Armenia, the ruins of Ani stand as a silent, windswept monument to a forgotten golden age. Once a thriving metropolis of over 100,000 people, known far and wide as the city of 1,001 churches for its stunning skyline of domes and spires, this medieval Armenian capital was a dazzling crossroads of culture, commerce, and faith. Its strategic location on the Silk Road brought it immense wealth and influence, but also made it a constant target for powerful empires. While the haunting beauty of its above-ground ruins, the cathedral's skeletal arches, the church walls still adorned with faint frescoes captivates every visitor, the city's true story of resilience is written in the hidden world beneath them. An elaborate network of underground crypts, chapels, and refuges snakes through the bedrock, a subterranean echo of the piety and desperation that defined life in this contested land. These were not merely storage cellars or simple tombs. The underground spaces of Ani were meticulously carved sanctuaries designed for two intertwined purposes: eternal rest and earthly survival. The most evocative of these are the rock-cut crypts, often located directly beneath the major churches. To descend into one is to step into a sacred space of breathtaking artistry. The walls are not rough-hewn rock. They are covered in intricate, deeply carved crosses of astonishing variety, elaborate interlaced designs known as kochkars, each one unique, serving as both a devotional offering and a permanent prayer for the soul interred within. Alongside these crosses are inscriptions in Armenian, a beautiful and ancient alphabet recording the names and deeds of nobles, merchants, and clergy, ensuring their memory would be preserved even if the city above fell. The atmosphere in these chambers is one of profound stillness and reverence, a stark contrast to the chaos that frequently raged on the surface, and chaos was a frequent visitor to Ani. The city's history is a relentless cycle of siege, conquest, and brief periods of fragile independence, caught between the ambitions of the Byzantine Empire, Seljuk Turks, Georgians, and Mongols. It was during these terrifying times that the underground truly became a lifeline. When enemy armies were spotted on the horizon, or when the city walls were breached, the citizens of Ani would flee not out into the open but down. These subterranean chapels and expanded tunnel systems became places of frantic prayer and desperate refuge. Families huddled together in the dim light of oil lamps, listening to the muffled sounds of destruction above, while priests would continue to hold services, their voices a low murmur against the rock, offering solace and maintaining a fragile thread of hope and normalcy. The very act of digging these spaces was an act of profound faith, a belief that their God would protect them in the womb of the earth and that their culture, symbolized by those intricate crosses, would endure any fire. The archaeological work to fully understand this underground network is, sadly, a story itself fraught with modern difficulty. Ani's location directly on the sensitive border between Turkey and Armenia means it exists in a zone of long-standing political tension and restricted access. This has made large-scale, systematic excavation incredibly challenging. The findings that have been made, however, are profoundly revealing. Explorations have uncovered evidence that these spaces were used continuously over centuries, with layers of artifacts showing they were stocked with supplies, jars for water and grain, charcoal for small fires indicating they were prepared for long periods of occupation. The preservation of delicate frescoes and inscriptions in the stable underground environment has been far superior to those on the surface, which have been heavily eroded by wind and rain. This accidental protection has saved countless details of Armenian art and epigraphy that would have otherwise been lost forever. The crypts of Ani ultimately tell a universal story of how humanity seeks solace in the earth during times of immense suffering. This was not an isolated phenomenon. From the Christian catacombs of Rome to the secret shrines of persecuted communities everywhere, the underground has always offered a dual sanctuary. It protects the body from immediate physical danger, and it protects the spirit by providing a concealed, sacred space to practice one's faith and maintain identity under the threat of eradication. The people of Ani used the very rock beneath their city to shield not just their lives, but their soul, carving their prayers into the walls as a permanent testament to their resilience. This profound spiritual use of the subterranean world stands in stark contrast to the motivations we find at our next destination, where the drive to dig deep was fueled not by faith, but by an insatiable hunger for the wealth that literally paved the empires of the world. High in the thin, freezing air of the Andes, at an altitude that leaves visitors gasping for breath, lies a mountain that fundamentally reshaped the world. This is Cerro Rico, the rich hill of Potosi, a site that was never a capital city in the political sense, but for over 2 centuries functioned as the undeniable economic capital of the entire Spanish Empire. Its story is not one of sacred rituals or strategic defense, but of pure, unadulterated extraction, a relentless hunger for silver that forged a global economy and cost countless lives in the terrifying darkness beneath the earth. The tunnels that vein this mountain are not merely mines, they are a geological scar, the physical manifestation of colonial avarice and human suffering on an almost unimaginable scale. The sheer output of Potosi is difficult to comprehend. At its peak in the 16th and 17th centuries, it was the single largest industrial complex in the world, producing over half of the world's silver. This river of precious metal flowed across the Atlantic, financing Spain's endless wars in Europe, building its grand cathedrals and palaces, and flooding a previously cash-starved global market. The first pesos minted from Potosi silver became the world's first global currency, facilitating trade from Manila to Madrid. This immense wealth, however, had a horrific source. The mines were operated through a system of forced labor known as the meter, which conscripted thousands of indigenous men from across the Andes. Dragged from their communities, they were forced to endure shifts that could last up to 48 hours in the depths of the mountain, using primitive tools to hack at the rock in stifling heat and toxic dust. The death toll was catastrophic, with conservative estimates ranging in the millions over the centuries, from tunnel collapses, silicosis lung disease, and mercury poisoning from the refining process. Cerro Rico became known as the mountain that eats men, a monument not to human achievement but to human exploitation. Yet within this brutal system, there were astonishing flashes of technological ingenuity, born from the desperate need to solve very practical problems. The most significant challenge was water flooding in the lower shafts could halt the entire operation. To combat this, the Spanish overseers employed a series of sophisticated hydraulic engines called lagunas, a system of dams and reservoirs built high on the mountainside. They would release these stored volumes of water in a controlled torrent to power massive suction pumps deep within the mines, a clever application of water power to solve a water problem. They also developed elaborate ventilation systems using fires to create air currents and a complex network of leather flap doors operated by young boys to direct fresh air deeper into the tunnels. These innovations weren't driven by a concern for worker safety, but by a cold calculation to protect the valuable flow of silver. It was a grim paradox. The same intellect that could engineer such clever solutions was entirely subservient to a system of breathtaking cruelty. Today, the mountain is a hollowed-out, unstable shell, its summit visibly sinking from centuries of excavation. While large-scale industrial mining has ceased, thousands of cooperativistas, independent miners, still clamber into its unstable depths every day, following the same narrow veins their ancestors did, using dynamite and hand tools. They work in conditions that have changed little in centuries, risking their lives for scant earnings, paying homage to a devil-like figure known as LTO, who is believed to own the minerals and control the safety of the mines. This ongoing practice turns the mountain into a living museum, a place where the past is not a distant memory but a daily, dangerous reality. Many of the oldest shafts are now completely inaccessible, sealed by collapses or flooded with water, their depths holding not only forgotten silver veins but also the silent, skeletal remains of those who never made it out, a permanent testament to the human cost of the empire above. The story of Potosi forces a crucial reframing of what we consider a capital. While kings held court in Madrid and viceroys governed from Lima, the true engine of their power was this remote, brutalized mountain in the Andes. It proves that the wealth and stability of surface-level capitals were often directly built upon the brutal extraction of resources from a subterranean world of suffering. The grandeur of the Spanish Golden Age, its art, its architecture, its global reach, has a shadow counterpart etched into the tunnels of Cerro Rico. This dynamic where the luxury of the center is subsidized by the exploitation of the periphery is a recurring theme in history, and Potosi stands as its most stark and powerful example. It challenges us to look at any great empire and ask not just what was built, but what was dug up and at what terrible price. This brutal economic reality, where the underground served as a brutal engine for surface power, finds a chilling parallel in a much more recent conflict, where the tunnels were used not to extract treasure, but to traffic in something even more volatile, information itself. From the silver mines of Potosi, where the underground was an engine of brutal economic extraction, we jump forward to a very different kind of subterranean struggle, one fought not with picks and shovels but with wiretaps and stolen secrets. In the divided city of Cold War Berlin, the ancient practice of tunneling for strategic advantage found its ultimate modern expression. Here, in the heart of a 20th century ideological standoff, the ground beneath the city became a clandestine battlefield, proving that the human impulse to dig for power is absolutely timeless. This wasn't about burying the dead or storing treasure. It was about harvesting the most valuable commodity of the modern era, information. The most famous of these covert operations was run by the American CIA and the British MI6, a breathtakingly audacious project codenamed Operation Gold. In the 1950s, they pinpointed a critical vulnerability. A major Soviet military communication cable ran through the Soviet-occupied sector of the city, but it was buried tantalizingly close to the border with the American sector. Their plan was as simple as it was dangerous: dig a tunnel from the American side, over 1,500 feet long, directly under the border, and tap into that cable. For nearly a year, a team of engineers and intelligence officers worked in absolute secrecy from a nondescript warehouse in West Berlin. They excavated an astonishing 600,000 cubic feet of soil, which they had to secretly dispose of by bagging it up and shipping it out in covered trucks to avoid detection. The tunnel itself was a marvel of engineering, complete with a railway for removing debris, reinforced walls, and a sophisticated tapping chamber that was soundproofed and air-conditioned to protect the sensitive recording equipment. For 11 months after its completion in 1955, the tunnel delivered a windfall of intelligence, allowing the West to listen in on countless Soviet and East German military communications. But in a twist of espionage worthy of a spy novel, the entire operation was likely compromised from the very beginning. The British had a mole, a high-ranking intelligence officer named George Blake, who was secretly working for the KGB. He almost certainly informed the Soviets about the tunnel's construction. Rather than shutting it down immediately and exposing their source, the Soviets made a brilliant counter-move. They allowed the tunnel to operate, carefully filtering the intelligence that passed through the tapped cable. They fed the West a mixture of genuine but low-value information to maintain the illusion of success, while withholding their most sensitive secrets and using the channel to spread deliberate misinformation. When they finally discovered the tunnel with a staged, dramatic excavation in 1956, it was a masterstroke of propaganda, allowing them to publicly humiliate the West while having protected their own double agent. This incredible game of cat and mouse demonstrated that subterranean warfare had evolved into a complex psychological duel. Yet these tunnels weren't only for spies, they were also lifelines for ordinary people desperate for freedom. As the Berlin Wall physically cemented the division of the city, a separate, desperate network of tunnels emerged, built not by governments but by courageous students and civilians. These were escape tunnels, dug with shovels and sheer determination from basements in West Berlin to cellars in the east. The most famous, Tunnel 29, was dug by a group of students over 6 months in 1962. It was a claustrophobic, perilous passage, just wide enough for a person to crawl through, constantly threatened by cave-ins and groundwater. Its successful operation culminated in a single, tense night when 29 people, including children and an infant smeared with cognate to keep her quiet, crawled through the mud and darkness to reach the West. These private, humanitarian tunnels represent the other side of the coin, the use of the underground not for state power, but for individual liberation, a powerful testament to the human spirit's refusal to be caged. The legacy of Berlin's spy tunnels is that they blur the line between the ancient and the modern in a fascinating way. The fundamental principle using the hidden dimension beneath the earth to gain an advantage over an adversary is something the Persians at Persepolis or the Byzantines in Constantinople would have understood perfectly. The technology changes from simple pickaxes to sophisticated electronic listening posts, but the core strategic instinct remains identical. Even today, construction projects in Berlin occasionally stumble upon previously unknown sections of tunnel, sealed and forgotten, reminding the city that its foundation is a layered archive of its tumultuous past. This modern chapter forces us to reconsider all the ancient tunnels we've explored. They weren't just static structures, but active, pulsating veins of strategy, fear, and ambition. They were the operating system of their time, running in the background, invisible to the citizens walking the streets above, yet absolutely critical to the survival and power of the state. This realization that the past and present are connected by a continuous thread of subterranean strategy makes the complete unknown of our next destination all the more compelling. A great capital where the underground remains a profound and tantalizing archaeological puzzle. While the grand stone walls and conical towers of Great Zimbabwe stand as an iconic testament to African architectural genius, the true secrets of this medieval capital may not be in the majestic ruins we see, but in the enigmatic world hidden beneath our feet. For generations, the focus has been on the impressive dry stone masonry of the Great Enclosure and the Hill Complex, structures that so confounded early European colonists they wrongly attributed them to foreign powers like the Phoenicians or King Solomon, unable to conceive of such sophistication originating in sub-Saharan Africa. This colonial bias didn't just misattribute the builders, it actively discouraged serious investigation into the site's deeper layers, leaving the subterranean realm of Great Zimbabwe as one of archaeology's most tantalizing unfinished chapters. What little we do know suggests that this underground network, a system of pits, tunnels, and carefully modified natural caves, was absolutely central to the city's function as the heart of a vast trading empire that dominated southern Africa for centuries. The most compelling theories about these spaces connect directly to the source of the kingdom's legendary wealth: gold. The Zimbabwean plateau is rich with gold deposits, and the kingdom became the middleman in a sprawling trade network that funneled the precious metal from inland mines to the Swahili coast city-states like Kilwa, where it was exchanged for exotic goods like Chinese celadon porcelain, Persian glassware, and Indian beads. The underground structures could have served as incredibly secure storage for this immense wealth before it was transported across the continent. Some archaeologists point to the discovery of hidden, plaster-lined pits within the stone walls that could have been used to safeguard gold dust, ivory, or other high-value commodities from theft. Other chambers showing evidence of soot and extreme heat might have been used for smelting, transforming raw ore into ingots right within the heart of the city, under the watchful eye of the ruling elite. This would have given them ultimate control over the primary source of their economic power, turning the underground into a sort of fortified royal treasury and mint. But to reduce these spaces to mere economics would be to miss a deeper layer of meaning. For the Shona people, the ancestors of great Zimbabwe's builders, the spiritual and the material worlds are deeply intertwined. Certain caves and rock formations are considered sacred, serving as dwelling places for ancestral spirits and as sites for communicating with the spiritual realm. The numerous cave systems incorporated into the city's layout, particularly within the hill complex, which was likely a royal residence and ritual center, were almost certainly used for important ceremonies. The acoustic properties of these spaces are remarkable. Even a whisper can carry through some of these tunnels, suggesting they could have been used for oracle practices or for creating awe-inspiring soundscapes during rituals. The very act of descending into the earth might have been a powerful symbolic journey, connecting the ruler to the ancestral world and legitimizing their authority not just through wealth but through spiritual sanction. This fusion of the economic and the sacred would have made the underground the dual heart of the kingdom's power. The sudden abandonment of Great Zimbabwe around the 15th century remains one of its greatest mysteries, and the answers likely lie in those unexplored depths. Did a shift in trade routes starve the city of its economic lifeblood? Did overpopulation and overfarming lead to an environmental collapse, with evidence of soil erosion preserved in buried layers? Or was it a spiritual crisis, a loss of faith in the rulers that caused people to simply leave? Only meticulous excavation of the underground amidst the ancient trash heaps can provide the data needed to answer these questions. The organic material preserved in these pits, seeds, animal bones, pollen samples, can tell us what people ate, how the climate changed, and how the landscape was managed. This kind of evidence is crucial for dismantling the last vestiges of colonial-era theories that argued the city was abandoned due to inherent instability or resource mismanagement, instead revealing a complex story of adaptation and change. Every trowel of earth turned at Great Zimbabwe today has the power to rewrite history, not by finding a single lost treasure, but by patiently reconstructing the daily life and sophisticated systems of a civilization that mastered its environment and dominated regional trade for hundreds of years. The ongoing work by teams of African archaeologists is slowly painting a picture of a highly organized, complex society with its own unique solutions to urban living. Each new discovery, a previously unknown tunnel, a ritual deposit of artifacts, a sealed storage chamber, adds another piece to the puzzle, emphasizing that the full story of this great capital cannot be told until we fully understand the hidden world that supported the magnificent stone city above. This patient, ground-level detective work is the key to reclaiming a narrative and honoring the ingenuity of the people who built one of the medieval world's most extraordinary cities. For centuries, the true extent of the underground worlds beneath abandoned capitals was a matter of guesswork, luck, and often destructive digging. Archaeologists had to rely on crumbling manuscripts, local legends, and the risky process of excavation, which could damage the very structures they sought to understand. But today, a quiet revolution is sweeping the field, giving us a powerful new set of eyes to see through stone, soil, and jungle canopy. This isn't about bigger shovels, it's about smarter tools that allow us to listen to the earth and map its secrets without ever breaking the surface. The era of invasive, potentially harmful exploration is giving way to a new age of precise, non-invasive discovery, fundamentally changing our relationship with the past. At the forefront of this change is LiDAR, which stands for light detection and ranging. Imagine flying a specially equipped plane or drone over a dense rainforest like the one surrounding Angkor Wat in Cambodia. The laser pulses from the LiDAR system can penetrate the tiny gaps in the thick vegetation, bouncing off the solid ground below and returning to the sensor. By measuring the time it takes for each pulse to return, a computer can strip away the millions of leaves and trees, digitally revealing the ground surface with astonishing precision. This is exactly what happened at Angkor, where LiDAR surveys didn't just find a few new temples, they revealed an entire sprawling metropolitan landscape. The data showed a vast network of roads, canals, village mounds, and previously unknown temples, proving the Khmer capital was not an isolated ceremonial center, but a low-density urban sprawl that supported a massive population. This single technological leap forced a complete rewrite of the history of one of the world's most famous archaeological sites, all without a single shovel touching the ground. While LiDAR excels at mapping surface topography through obstructions, another technology peers directly into the ground itself. Ground-penetrating radar, or GPR, works like a sophisticated ultrasound for the Earth. A device is dragged over the surface, sending high-frequency radio waves into the ground. These waves bounce back at different speeds and intensities when they encounter changes in soil density or man-made structures like a buried wall, a tomb, or an empty tunnel. In the heart of Rome, GPR has been used to map the ancient foundations beneath the modern city, revealing the plans of long-vanished buildings and the intricate network of the Hypogium with incredible detail. It allows archaeologists to literally see the ghostly outlines of history beneath their feet, creating a detailed three-dimensional map of the subterranean city before any excavation is even considered. This not only guides precise, targeted digs, but also helps modern city planners avoid damaging priceless ruins during new construction projects. The data from these tools doesn't just sit on a computer. It is brought to life through the magic of 3D mapping and virtual reality. Archaeologists can now take the millions of data points gathered by LiDAR and GPR and construct immersive, photorealistic digital models of entire sites. This means a researcher in a lab halfway across the world can put on a VR headset and take a virtual walk through a precisely reconstructed underground tunnel in Persepolis, examining the tool marks on the walls and taking measurements as if they were actually there. For the public, this technology is democratizing access to history. Many museums and online platforms now offer digital tours of sites that are too fragile, too remote, or too dangerous for the average person to visit. This creates incredible educational opportunities and fosters a global appreciation for cultural heritage that was once locked away in academic journals. The impact of this technological shift is profound and twofold. Firstly, it dramatically accelerates the pace of discovery. Projects that would have taken decades of painstaking, manual surveying can now be completed in a matter of weeks, revealing more data than ever thought possible. But perhaps more importantly, it is a powerfully preservative force. By allowing us to excavate digitally first, we can minimize the physical disturbance of fragile sites. Every time we break ground, we inevitably destroy some of the context and evidence. These tools let us learn everything we can non-destructively, preserving the site in its original state for future generations who will undoubtedly have even better technologies at their disposal. This marks a move from archaeology as a process of extraction to archaeology as a process of preservation and detailed recording, ensuring that the hidden worlds beneath our feet can continue to whisper their secrets for centuries to come. But this incredible power to reveal the past comes with an equally immense responsibility, forcing us to confront difficult and often uncomfortable ethical questions. The moment we discover a hidden chamber or a lost tomb, we set in motion a chain of events that can either protect or irrevocably damage that fragile piece of history. The central dilemma is profound. Do we excavate everything we can, driven by an insatiable curiosity to know all there is to know, or do we make the conscious, deliberate choice to leave certain secrets undisturbed, preserving them for future generations who may have even better technologies and more sensitive approaches? This isn't just an academic debate, it's a practical challenge that archaeologists face at nearly every site, weighing the potential for knowledge against the very real risk of loss. One of the most pressing threats is the simple act of exposure. A sealed tomb or a buried structure has existed in a state of perfect equilibrium for centuries: a stable temperature, consistent humidity, and protection from light and air. The moment we break that seal, we introduce change. The outside air rushes in, and with it, fluctuations in humidity that can cause delicate paintings to flake off walls in hours. Sunlight can fade intricate pigments in minutes. Even the breath of tourists, if a site is open to the public, can raise humidity levels and promote the growth of destructive mold and bacteria. This is why the decision to open a find is never taken lightly. In many cases, the most ethical choice is to document the site with non-invasive tools like ground-penetrating radar, and then rebury it, consciously choosing to leave the treasure in the ground where it is safest, a time capsule for the future. It's an act of humility, acknowledging that our current methods might still be too crude to properly care for what we find. Beyond the environmental threats, there is the ever-present specter of looting and the illicit antiquities trade. The unfortunate reality is that a beautifully painted vase from an Egyptian tomb or a golden figurine from a Mesopotamian royal grave has a high dollar value on the black market. News of a discovery can act like a beacon, drawing looters who will tunnel into sites with brutal efficiency, destroying invaluable archaeological context in their ruthless search for saleable objects. A looter doesn't care which layer of soil a pot was found in. That information, which could tell us the exact century it was made, is lost forever as they rip it from the ground. They smash through walls, discard broken artifacts, and erase the story of the site, leaving behind only a hollowed-out shell and a handful of decontextualized trinkets that end up in private collections, their cultural meaning stripped away. This brutal reality means that sometimes the greatest act of preservation is silence, not publicizing a find until a secure, scientific excavation can be mounted. This leads directly to the complex and emotionally charged issue of ownership and repatriation. For centuries, under colonial regimes, artifacts were routinely excavated and shipped back to museums in Europe and America, often with little regard for the wishes of the local people. These objects weren't just souvenirs, they were and are vital pieces of cultural heritage and identity. The ongoing global conversation about repatriation is fundamentally about correcting this historical wrong. It's about asking who truly has the right to steward these treasures. Is it the institution that possesses them, or the modern-day descendants of the culture that created them? This is not a simple matter of logistics. It's a profound question of justice, respect, and healing. When a sacred funerary mask is returned to its country of origin, it isn't just an object going home. It's a piece of a nation's soul being restored, a recognition that the underground holds not just history, but the very identity of a people. Navigating this complex ethical landscape requires a new model of archaeology, one built on international cooperation and deep, genuine collaboration with local communities. This means involving indigenous scholars and community leaders from the very beginning of a project, respecting their knowledge, their traditions, and their deep connection to the land and its history. It means planning for the long-term care of artifacts within their countries of origin, helping to build the museums and train the conservators who will protect them. It's about shifting the goal from mere extraction to shared stewardship, ensuring that the incredible stories we uncover from the underground serve to educate and inspire everyone, not just a privileged few. This ethical framework isn't a constraint on discovery. It's a necessary guide, ensuring that our pursuit of the past is conducted with the wisdom, respect, and humility that such a profound endeavor demands. The race to uncover the past is now unfolding against a clock set by the pressures of the present. As climate change intensifies, bringing with it rising sea levels that threaten coastal ruins like Thonis Heraclean, and more frequent, violent storms that erode ancient stonework, and as rampant urban expansion paves over forgotten historical layers, the underground world is rapidly becoming humanity's last best archive. These subterranean spaces, once protected by their very concealment, are now incredibly vulnerable. This isn't just about losing individual artifacts. It's about the potential erasure of entire chapters of the human story before we even know they exist. This urgent reality is forcing a dramatic shift in how we approach archaeology, moving from a discipline of careful excavation to one of high-tech preservation and virtual exploration, ensuring that these fragile time capsules can survive for future generations to study and appreciate. In response to these threats, a new frontier of archaeological practice is emerging, one that prioritizes digital preservation over physical intrusion. Pioneering projects around the world are now using laser scanning and photogrammetry to create incredibly detailed, millimeter-accurate 3D models of entire sites. This means that even if a tunnel system collapses or a tomb succumbs to flooding, its every detail, every crack in the wall, every faint inscription, every tool mark left by its builder is preserved forever in a digital format. This data then becomes the foundation for immersive virtual reality experiences that are democratizing access to history in an unprecedented way. Imagine a school child in Tokyo putting on a headset and standing in the heart of the Basilica Cistern in Constantinople, looking up at the towering columns reflected in the virtual water. Or a historian in Brazil conducting detailed measurements of the royal tombs of Ur from their office, examining the arrangement of artifacts without ever needing to travel to Iraq. This technology doesn't just protect the sites, it shatters the barriers of geography, cost, and physical ability, allowing anyone with an internet connection to become an explorer of these hidden worlds. The potential for new discovery is being supercharged by artificial intelligence, which is adding a powerful new layer of analysis to the vast amounts of data we can now collect. AI algorithms can be trained to scan thousands of satellite images or LiDAR maps, identifying subtle, human-made patterns in the landscape that would be virtually invisible to the naked eye. They can cross-reference geological surveys with historical trade routes to predict the most likely locations of lost capitals. They can even analyze the stylistic features of pottery or inscriptions from a newly discovered chamber and instantly compare them to a global database of artifacts, suggesting cultural connections and trade links that might have taken researchers decades to piece together manually. This isn't about replacing archaeologists, it's about giving them a powerful new set of tools that can process information at a scale and speed that is humanly impossible, turning big data into profound historical insight and guiding them to the most promising places to focus their invaluable expertise. This forward-looking, technology-driven approach fundamentally ensures that the mystery and wonder of these abandoned capitals will not only endure but will continue to grow. We are on the cusp of a golden age of discovery, where the next great find might not come from a team with shovels in a remote desert, but from a researcher analyzing AI-processed data in a lab, identifying the faint outline of a forgotten city beneath a modern metropolis or a jungle canopy. Each technological leap allows us to ask more sophisticated questions of the past, to reinterpret sites we thought we understood, and to appreciate the astonishing ingenuity of ancient engineers and artists with ever greater clarity. The future of subterranean discovery is a collaborative one, a partnership between human curiosity and machine intelligence, between physical exploration and digital preservation, all working in concert to ensure that the whispers from beneath our feet are not only heard but are saved, shared, and understood for centuries to come. But beyond the grand sweep of empires and the thrill of discovery, you might still wonder what any of this has to do with you, with your life today. Why does a tunnel in Persepolis or a manuscript vault in Timbuktu hold any relevance in our fast-paced modern world? The answer is surprisingly personal. These hidden worlds are not just about the past, they are a mirror reflecting timeless human struggles and triumphs that are as relevant now as they were thousands of years ago. They speak to a universal drive that exists in all of us, the urge to protect what we value most, to innovate in the face of challenge, and to leave something meaningful behind. When we look at the sophisticated water systems of Carthage, we're not just looking at ancient plumbing, we're witnessing a community's fierce determination to survive against overwhelming odds, a lesson in resilience that resonates deeply in an era of climate change and environmental uncertainty. The meticulously arranged bones in the Paris catacombs force a conversation we often avoid about mortality and how we choose to remember those who came before us, a poignant reminder of our own fleeting time and the legacy we will one day leave. Engaging with these stories does something profound. It collapses the distance between us and the past, creating a powerful, tangible connection to the people who walked this earth long before we were born. We can look at a 5,000-year-old gold bead from Ur and marvel not just at its craftsmanship, but at the human hands that shaped it, hands that likely felt joy, fear, ambition, and love just like ours. That shared thread of experience, that common humanity, is what makes history feel less like a dry subject and more like a family story we are all a part of. This connection fosters a deeper sense of empathy and global citizenship. Understanding the intellectual brilliance of the manuscripts from Timbuktu shatters outdated prejudices and expands our appreciation for the diverse and rich contributions of cultures across the globe. It helps us see our own place in a much larger, interconnected human tapestry, fostering a respect for cultural heritage that is crucial in our increasingly interconnected world. This isn't just about passive learning, it's about active inspiration. The problems our ancestors solved with sheer ingenuity, from regulating microclimates at Machu Picchu to creating sustainable underground cities in Cappadocia, and spark our own creativity in tackling contemporary issues. Their solutions, born from a deep understanding of their local environment, offer valuable case studies in sustainability and adaptive design that modern architects and urban planners are only now beginning to fully appreciate and emulate. Furthermore, the very act of preserving these sites is an act of hope for the future. By advocating for the protection of these fragile underground archives, we are making a statement that our shared human story matters, that it holds value for generations yet unborn. We become part of a chain of stewardship, ensuring that the lessons, warnings, and inspirations from the past are not lost but are instead carried forward to inform and guide the future. This personal connection makes the topic not just interesting but urgently important. The threats to these sites, from looting and urban sprawl to climate change and political instability, are very real and ongoing. When a tunnel system collapses or a tomb is looted, we don't just lose artifacts, we lose irreplaceable pages from the story of us. Recognizing that these are not distant, abstract ruins but the physical remnants of our collective human journey transforms their preservation from an academic concern into a personal responsibility. It challenges us to think about the modern equivalents of these ancient time capsules, the digital data, the cultural artifacts, the very health of our planet that we are creating for future generations. What will our underground whisper to them? What story will our layers tell? Perhaps you're feeling that same pull, that urge to pick up a trowel and see what secrets the earth might yield. It's a powerful feeling, born from the stories we've shared, but it's a passion that must be channeled responsibly. The good news is that you don't need a doctorate or a permit to dig to make a genuine and valuable contribution to the field of archaeology. In fact, some of the most important work happens far from the excavation site, supported by people just like you who believe these stories are worth protecting. The journey from enthusiast to advocate begins with recognizing that these fragile sites are non-renewable resources. Once a layer of soil is disturbed or an artifact is removed from its context, the information it holds is lost forever. Your role isn't to be the one digging, but to be one of the many who ensure the digging, when it happens, is done right. One of the most impactful ways to get involved is by lending your support to the organizations on the front lines of preservation. Reputable institutions like the Archaeological Institute of America, local historical societies, and international bodies like UNESCO World Heritage Center rely on public support to fund their vital work. This isn't just about donations, though those are crucial for funding digs, conservation labs, and protective measures at vulnerable sites. It's also about becoming a member, subscribing to their publications, and following their work. This kind of engagement turns you from a passive observer into an active stakeholder in the preservation of global heritage. You become part of a community that values context over conquest, understanding over ownership, ensuring that the focus remains on the story an object can tell rather than the object itself as a mere trophy. For those who crave a more hands-on experience, the world of citizen science has opened up incredible new avenues for participation. Many university-led research projects now offer programs where volunteers can work alongside professional archaeologists on actual excavations, often after a short training period. These are not just busy work. Participants might be tasked with carefully sifting soil, washing and cataloging finds, or even helping with the meticulous process of surveying a site. If you can't travel to a dig, your computer can be your portal. numerous projects have digitized thousands of pottery fragments, satellite images, or even Egyptian papyri, asking for help from the public to identify patterns, transcribe texts, or classify images. By devoting just a few minutes of your time online, you can directly contribute to a research database, helping academics piece together puzzles that would otherwise take them years to solve. This democratization of research is one of the most exciting developments in modern archaeology, proving that you don't need to be in the field to be in the field. When you do decide to visit these remarkable places, your approach matters immensely. Always seek out officially sanctioned guided tours. The guides are often local experts or trained archaeologists who provide context you'd never get from a guidebook, pointing out subtle features and sharing the latest discoveries. More importantly, they know how to navigate the site without causing damage. Stick to marked paths, never lean on fragile walls or structures, and resist the incredibly destructive temptation to take a souvenir, rock, or pottery shard. Every piece removed erases a data point. Your visit should also be an opportunity to support the local community that acts as the long-term guardian of these places. Choose local guides, stay in locally owned accommodations, and purchase crafts from local artisans. This creates a positive economic incentive for preservation, showing that a living, protected history is more valuable than one that is looted and sold. Ultimately, the most powerful tool you have is your own voice. Become an advocate for preservation by sharing what you've learned with others. Correct misinformation when you hear it, explain why looting is so destructive, and encourage a mindset of stewardship over ownership. The romance of the lone treasure hunter is a dangerous myth that has destroyed more history than it has ever revealed. True discovery lies in the patient, collaborative unraveling of the past, piece by carefully documented piece. By choosing to engage ethically, you are voting for a future where the hidden worlds beneath abandoned capitals continue to reveal their secrets, not to the highest bidder in a private auction, but to all of humanity forever. This conscious, respectful approach ensures that the whispers from the underground will never be silenced. From the clandestine spy tunnels of Cold War Berlin to the sacred ceremonial caves of Teotihuacan, from the life-sustaining aqueducts of Carthage to the bone-lined catacombs of Paris, we have journeyed through an astonishing array of hidden worlds. Each capital, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, possessed its own unique story, its own reason for digging deep. And yet, when we step back to look at this global tapestry of subterranean spaces, a stunning pattern begins to emerge, a set of unifying threads that weave these disparate stories into a single, profound narrative about the human experience. It turns out that when societies are faced with fundamental challenges, no matter where or when they exist, they often arrive at remarkably similar solutions, and they often choose to build those solutions beneath the earth. Consider the universal, non-negotiable need for security. We saw it in the escaped tunnels of Persepolis, engineered to whisk a Persian king to safety from a besieged palace. We encountered it again in the multi-leveled, defensible cities of Cappadocia, where entire populations could vanish underground to evade invaders, and we found a modern parallel in the covert spy tunnels of Berlin, built to gain a strategic advantage in an ideological war. Though the technologies changed from chisels to pneumatic drills, the core instinct was identical. When threat arrives, humanity's first impulse is to seek shelter in the protective embrace of the ground. It is a primal response written into our DNA and etched into the bedrock of every continent. Just as universal is the human drive to connect with something larger than ourselves. Again and again, across every culture we explored, the underground was chosen as the ideal realm for this spiritual pursuit. For the Teotihuacanos, a natural cave was a sacred portal to the gods, so significant that they built their massive pyramid of the sun directly above it. For the Nabateans in Petra, the cool, silent depths of a rock-cut tomb provided a perfect bridge between the world of the living and the afterlife. And for the early Christians in the Roman catacombs and the faithful in the crypts of Ani, the hidden world offered a sanctuary to practice their beliefs free from persecution. This global pattern suggests that we have always intuitively viewed the earth not as a void but as a liminal space, a place closer to the divine, to the ancestors, and to the mysteries of creation. Perhaps the most practical thread connecting all these sites is the brilliant management of essential resources. Every single capital, without exception, had to solve the puzzle of how to sustain a dense population. And so often the answer was found below. The Carthaginians built vast, hidden cisterns to outlast any siege. The Incas at Machu Picchu engineered subterranean channels to control microclimates for agriculture. The miners of Potosi dug for the silver that fueled a global empire, while the scribes of Timbuktu buried their manuscripts to protect a different kind of wealth, knowledge. This reveals a breathtaking kind of ingenuity, a shared understanding that survival and prosperity depend on harnessing the hidden potential of the landscape, whether that means storing water, preserving food, safeguarding treasure, or protecting ideas. What makes these parallel developments so extraordinary is that they occurred in isolation. The engineer designing a Qanat water system in ancient Persia had no communication with the architect plotting a subterranean aqueduct beneath a Roman palace. The Zapotec priest carving a scriptorium tomb in Monte Alban was unaware of the Christian monks illuminating manuscripts in a secluded European abbey. They were not copying each other, they were independently arriving at the same brilliant conclusions. This points to something fundamental and shared in the human mind, an innate capacity for innovation, and a common set of priorities that transcend culture, language, and epoch. Our ancestors everywhere were concerned with safety, spirituality, survival, and legacy. They just happened to build the solutions to those concerns in the same place, down. This realization is where our journey transforms from a simple tour of ruins into something far more meaningful. Recognizing these shared patterns does more than just satisfy historical curiosity. It builds a powerful sense of global empathy. It allows us to look at the intricate cross carved into the wall of an Armenian crypt and feel the same devotion as the person who chiseled it there 1,000 years ago. It allows us to marvel at the mathematical precision of a Carthaginian hydraulic system and share in the triumph of the engineer who designed it. We begin to see the people of the past not as distant, foreign figures, but as versions of ourselves, equipped with the same fears, hopes, and intellectual drive, simply working with different tools. Their underground worlds become a universal language, a book written in stone and soil that we are all capable of reading, a testament to our shared humanity and our continuous, unbroken struggle to not only survive on this planet, but to find meaning and leave a mark that will endure long after we are gone. Despite the incredible revelations brought to light by ground-penetrating radar and laser scanning, the Earth beneath our feet remains one of our planet's final, great frontiers, holding onto its most profound secrets with a stubborn grip. For every mystery we solve about these abandoned capitals, a dozen new, even more tantalizing questions seem to emerge from the shadows. Take the legendary city of Alexandria in Egypt, for instance. We know it was a beacon of knowledge and power, home to the great library and a melting pot of ancient innovation. Historical accounts hint at a sprawling necropolis, a literal city of the dead, lying beneath the modern metropolis, along with clandestine tunnels connecting the palace quarter to the harbor. But the full scope of this subterranean world remains just that, a hint. The modern city sits directly on top of its ancient predecessor, making large-scale excavation nearly impossible. What truly lies down there? Could entire halls of the legendary library, thought to be lost forever, have been stored in sealed, dry cellars for safekeeping? The possibility alone is enough to set any historian's heart racing. Then there's the enigma of Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, a site that has single-handedly upended our entire understanding of human civilization's dawn. This complex of massive, intricately carved stone pillars was built by hunter-gatherers over 11,000 years ago, millennia before the invention of writing or the wheel. But what was its purpose? The site is devoid of any evidence of permanent settlement, no houses, no trash pits, no graves. It appears to have been a purely ritualistic center, a cathedral from a time we never knew cathedrals existed. And while we can see its awe-inspiring above-ground circles, we have only just begun to probe what lies beneath the main excavation area. Ground-penetrating radar has revealed the haunting outlines of at least 20 more megalithic structures still buried in the earth. What secrets do these untouched chambers hold? Could they contain artifacts or carvings that explain why these prehistoric people invested such immense effort into this place? Or perhaps even evidence of a sophistication we have not yet dared to attribute to them? Each unexcavated pillar represents a chapter of human prehistory that is still completely unread. This sense of limitless potential is what fuels the field and captivates the public imagination. The speculation is not just wild fantasy, it's a necessary part of the scientific process. What if the Minoans of Knossos possessed engineering knowledge that was lost in the cataclysm of Thera? The sophisticated plumbing and earthquake-resistant architecture of their palaces suggest a level of understanding that seems almost anomalous for the Bronze Age. Could there be undiscovered texts or blueprints hidden in yet-to-be-found chambers that would rewrite the history of technology? Similarly, the sudden appearance of the Olmec civilization in Mesoamerica, with their colossal stone heads and complex calendar systems, has led some serious academics to ponder if we are missing a piece of the puzzle, a precursor culture or a lost chapter of development that would explain their advanced achievements. These are not questions seeking to prove the existence of magic or aliens. They are questions that challenge the conventional timeline of human innovation and urge us to keep digging, both physically and intellectually. This relentless curiosity is the engine of discovery, drawing in new generations of archaeologists, engineers, and historians armed with tools their predecessors could only dream of. They are not content with the stories already written in textbooks. They are driven by the blank pages waiting to be filled. The unknown beneath our feet is a frontier every bit as compelling and vast as the depths of the ocean or the expanse of outer space. It is a frontier that is accessible, mysterious, and deeply personal, connecting us to the very roots of who we are. Each new survey, each scratch of the trowel, holds the potential for a groundbreaking discovery that could once again turn our understanding of the past on its head, proving that history is not a static record but a living, breathing narrative that is constantly being unearthed and revised. From the sprawling tunnels of ancient Rome to the golden-laden tombs of Ur, the hidden worlds beneath abandoned capitals offer us so much more than just a collection of ruins. They provide a profound and deeply moving glimpse into the very core of human experience. These are not merely empty spaces. They are a testament to our shared creativity, a chronicle of our resilience in the face of overwhelming challenges, and a window into the spiritual yearning that has always connected us to something greater than ourselves. For centuries, we've walked over this history, unaware that just below the surface lies an entire narrative of who we are, a story written not on paper, but in stone, bone, and earth. It's a powerful reminder that the most complete history is a layered one, and that the full truth of a civilization is often buried, waiting patiently for the right moment to be rediscovered and to change our understanding of everything we thought we knew. I truly hope this journey through these silent, subterranean realms has sparked something in you, a new curiosity, a sense of wonder, or perhaps a different perspective on the ground beneath your own feet. History is not a distant, dusty subject confined to textbooks. It is a living, breathing connection to the countless lives that have shaped our world. These stories of survival, innovation, and faith are universal. They are our stories, so I'd love to hear from you. How do these hidden histories connect with your own life? Does it make you look differently at your own city, your own heritage? Share your thoughts and reflections in the comments below. Let's continue this conversation together as a community of curious explorers. If you've enjoyed this deep dive into history's greatest mysteries, make sure to subscribe and hit that notification bell. There are so many more secrets to uncover, from lost cities swallowed by jungles to ancient technologies that defy explanation. This channel is your gateway to those adventures, and always remember, the next great discovery, the next world-changing revelation, might not be in some far-off, exotic location. It could be right there, hidden in plain sight, waiting just beneath your feet. Thank you so much for watching, for your curiosity, and for joining me on this incredible exploration. Keep asking questions, keep seeking answers, and never stop unraveling the magnificent secrets of our world.